Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. I'm Mackie Hall, and today we're going to follow up on our last video based on backgrounds to build circular backgrounds. So here's the background we're going to be creating today, and with some additional skills, you'll be able to create wallpapers, advanced background, and even animated skins. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new document. Our new document will have a width of 1,000 points, a height of 1,000 points, a single artboard, and the RGB color mode. All right, before we get started, I want to remind you that we're using the Essentials Classic layout. The way we do that is we go to the top right-hand corner of the page, we select Essentials Classic. I also want to remind you that we are using Smart Guides. To activate Smart Guides, go to View, Smart Guides, or Control U. Last thing I want to remind you is that we'll be using the bottom center of the page for key command recommendations, hotkeys, and tips and tricks. All right, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our ellipse tool. We can do that two ways. The first way is to click and hold our rectangle tool and select the ellipse tool, or we can use the hotkey, which is L. Once we've done that, we'll click anywhere on our screen, and we'll create an ellipse 100 points wide by 100 points tall. We'll next increase our stroke size to 5 points. And then we will align our element to center both horizontally and vertically by using the align elements at the top of your page. If you don't see any of the align elements at the top of your page, all you need to do is go to Window, Align, or Shift F7, and your line window will pop up just like that. Next thing we're going to do is, with our shape still selected, we are going to make a scaled copy. We're going to do that by double-clicking our scale tool, and we're going to scale our element down to 15%. Next, we'll select Copy. Once done with that, let's zoom into our piece and pressing the plus sign. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to blend the two shapes together with steps. I'll show you how to do that right now. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our blend tool, and we'll click on a specific anchor point in our smaller shape. Next, we'll go to the outer shape and click on that matching anchor point. Note, when we do that, you get the fill anchor point icon on screen. Once we've done that, we're going to double click on our blend tool, and we're going to set our blend elements. First thing we're going to do is we'll change the spacing from smooth color to specified steps. Next, we're going to change the steps to 3. Click OK, and there you go. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to change our blend steps to actual physical shapes. We'll do that by selecting Object, Expand, click OK, and notice that our blend shapes are now actual physical shapes. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all of the unwanted elements of our shapes. All we need is a quarter of our shape. Follow along, I'll show you. Next, we're going to grab our direct selection tool. You can either select it or press A on your keyboard for the hotkey. We're going to deselect our shape, and then we're going to drag across the left half of our shape, just like that. We'll delete. We'll deselect one more time, and then we're going to drag across the bottom right part of our shape. Delete again, and note that we are only leaving a quarter of our shape. Now that we've done that, let's expand one more time to have our stroked shapes turn into actual filled objects. Once again, Object, Expand. We'll click OK. I'll drag it off the shape so you can see the transformation. Again, we'll click Object, Expand, and then we'll click OK. Note that our stroke shapes are now actual filled shapes. Let's deselect our shape to show you what we've got done. Now that we've completed this shape right here, you'll note that it is a quarter of our circle with the steps. We're going to duplicate that shape and rotate it twice. We're going to do that by grabbing our selection tool. We're going to drag across our shape. We'll copy and paste it in front. You can copy and paste in front by selecting Edit, Copy, and then paste in front, or the way I prefer to do it is using my key commands, which is Control-C for copy and Control-F for paste in front. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to drag my shape off the original shape. I'll hold my Shift key and arrow left. Pressing the Shift key along with the directional keys allows me to move my shape in 10-point increments instead of 1-point increments. You can also move it with your mouse. It's just a little bit easier this way. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to rotate our shape. We can do this by double-clicking our Rotate tool and rotating it 90 degrees. Once we've done that, we want to move our new shape back to the right so it is in contact with our original shape. We can do that two ways. We can arrow it back since we know that the shape is aligned, or we can use our mouse to bring our shapes together. In order to use our mouse and just drag it, we want to make sure that our snap to point function is on. So what we'll do is we go to View, select Snap to Point, or Alt-Control+. Once we've done that, we'll deselect our shape, and then we're going to grab our Move tool, and then I'm going to grab any anchor point and drag it over to the corresponding anchor point. It should snap and intersect like you see on screen. We're going to do this one more time. We're going to take our original shape once again. We're going to copy and paste it in front. We're going to arrow it down, again holding the Shift key. And then we're going to rotate our shape once again by using our Rotate tool. We'll double click on that. We're going to rotate it -90 degrees. Once we've done that, again, let's use our mouse and selection tool to drag our shape against our original shape. Again, we're going to grab an anchor point and move it to touch the corresponding anchor point just like that. Note that it said intersect. Once we've done that, we're a long way towards having our shape completed. We want to color code our original shapes to make our work a little bit easier while we're bringing these shapes together. Let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our top left shape. We're going to double click on our fill, and we're going to change our fill to red. It doesn't matter what red, we're ultimately going to go back to black as it is. Click OK. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to select our bottom right shape. We're going to double click on our fill once again, and we're going to change that to a blue. That looks fine, just like that. Let's deselect. And now that we've changed the colors of our shape, all we need to do is bring them together and arrange them so that the shape is ultimately going to work. So once again, we're going to select and move shapes. In this case, I'm going to grab my top left shape. I'm going to grab an anchor point, and I'm going to drag it over to match the corresponding original anchor point. Just like that. Note the intersect sign. I'll click and release, and I'm going to do the same thing with my bottom right shape. I'm going to click on my shape, then I'm going to grab my bottom right anchor point, and I'll drag it up again. Note that it intersects once again. Once we're done with that, let's arrange our shapes so that we've got all the shapes in order of how they want to appear. To make that easy is we'll select our red shape, we'll right click on it, we'll select Arrange, and we'll select Send to Back. Next thing we'll do is we'll grab our blue shape, we'll do the same thing, we'll select it, right click on it, and we'll select Arrange, Send to Back. Note that we can also use the key command, which is Shift-Control left bracket for send to back, or Shift-Control right bracket for bring to front. We'll click OK. And there you go. Next thing I want to do is I want to remove all the parts of the shape that wouldn't appear because, as you can see on the top right corner on the piece that we're modeling after, we want to get rid of those fills. So here's how we do it. So we're going to use the Shape Builder tool, which is generally a tool that we don't use very often, to make this happen. But before we use our Shape Builder tool, we're going to use our Pathfinder tool. Check it out. Let's go to Window, Pathfinder, or select Shift-Control F9. We're then going to select, under Pathfinders, Merge. Once we've done that, we're going to deselect our shape, and you'll see that if I click on it, this entire shape is now merged together. You can see it even more clearly if I go to Outlines, which is Control Y, and you can see a lot of the pieces of our original shapes are now gone. I'm going to go back to original colors. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to use our Shape Builder tool to collect all those different shapes, unify them, and then delete them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my shape. I'm going to grab my Shape Builder tool, and then I'm going to start dragging across to unify my shapes. Watch. I'll click, drag, And note that the individual shapes become one shape. Let's continue. All I'm doing is clicking and dragging across my shapes. Now that I'm done, I'm going to grab my direct select tool and I'm going to delete any of those shapes that I dragged across. I'll show you. Again, I'll grab my direct selection tool, deselect my shape, and then I'm going to click in the middle of all the shapes I want to delete and delete. Note that I'm not clicking along the edges, I'm just clicking on the middle of each shape that I want to delete. Once I'm done with that, I want to take an additional step. I want to go back to outlines and make sure that there aren't any legacy shapes that I might have missed. In this case, if I zoom in, I can be assured that I'm safe. Let's zoom out just a little bit. Let's deselect our shape and let's go back to color. Once I've done that, I want to do two more things. I want to add a background in case of the event that I want to change the background of my shape, and I want to change all my different colors to black. So let's do that right now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it to black. I'm going to grab my selection tool, drag across my entire shape just like that, and I'm going to change my fill to black, and I'll leave my stroke at transparent. Once I'm done with that, I'll deselect. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. I can either press M on the keyboard or, of course, click and find my rectangle tool just like that. Now that I'm done with that, I'm going to hover over the left edge of my shape until I get intersect on both corners. I then will click and drag all the way across my shape until it intersects again on the bottom right side. I'll release. I'll change my background color, in this case, to white, while keeping my stroke transparent. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my selection tool, right-click on my shape, arrange, and then send to back. Now that we're done with that, I'll deselect my shape. Then I'm going to drag across my entire shape again, just like that, and I'm going to group it together. Next, let's bring our entire page into view, and let's go ahead and make our pattern. The way we do that is we open up our color swatches by clicking on the color swatches on the right-hand side of the page, just like that. Or, of course, you can go to Window, Swatches in your Windows menu. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag my pattern into the swatches. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go back outside my pattern, deselect my shape, and then I will double-click into my pattern for a preview. Note that our pattern options window comes up. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the pattern name to Scales 1. I'm going to keep the tile type as grid. I'm going to keep the width and height at 57.5. Next thing I can do is I can change the copies from the default 5x5 to perhaps 9x9 to see how it would take on an entire page. I could also, if I wanted to see how that pattern stands on its own, I could dim the copies to perhaps 50% to see how it stands. I have no need to do that, so I'm going to restore that to the default 100, and then I'm going to exit my pattern editing mode by clicking the left arrow on the top left-hand part of the screen. Now that we're done with that, let's grab our shape and let's move it off the screen so we can preview it a little bit better. Now that I'm done with that, I'm going to create a 400 by 400 square by using my rectangle tool. Click anywhere on the screen, enter 400 by 400. We'll click OK. Let's align it center horizontally and vertically, again using our align tools. Let's make sure that our fill is selected. Note that it's in front now. Let's go back to our swatches window and let's select our new pattern. Let's go onto our page. Grab our selection tool, deselect our shape, and we are done. Now, what if you want to rotate this shape 45 degrees so we've got sort of a vertical fish scale pattern? Well, one way we could try to do it is we could select our shape, rotate our shape 45 degrees or negative 45 degrees, and that does not work. I'm going to undo. And let's see what will work. Let's drag this square off the page as well. We'll grab our selection tool, click and drag it off the page. And let's make a copy of our original shape. I'll copy and paste in front. And let's bring it back onto the original page. I'm just going to align it back to center, horizontally and vertically. And now that we've got this back on the page, let's go ahead and rotate our shape. Again, we'll rotate it by selecting our rotate tool. We'll rotate it -45 degrees. And then let's grab our selection tool and let's click and drag this shape back into our swatches. We'll double click on our new pattern. We'll rename our new pattern Scales 2. And then let's play with the tile types. First thing we'll do is we'll click on our grid and we'll change from grid to brick by column. Note right away the bricks become staggered, but they're still not together. What we want to do is we want to change our brick width to half of what it is. Let's give it a go. Our original width is 81.3173. Let's change that width to 40.6586. We'll tab off of it. And that looks pretty good. Let's exit our pattern editing options. Let's drag our original pattern off the artboard. Let's create a new rectangle. Click and release anywhere on screen. Once again, we'll align it center horizontally and vertically. And if your new pattern has not been already selected, go to the Swatches window. Go to the Swatches window and select your new pattern. Let's grab our selection tool, deselect. That looks pretty good. We are done. So there you have it. As a follow-up to this video, I encourage you to play with circles and additional shapes to see what you can come up with. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. Otherwise, throw me a like. I'd really appreciate that. And as usual, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. We'll see you next time. See you.